You might notice that the inside of the body cavity, now empty of its major organs, is not simply left hollow. After the evisceration and brain removal, the cavity is thoroughly cleaned and then often packed with various materials. This is an unusual detail sometimes. These packing materials included linen, sawdust, or even aromatic substances like myrrh, cassia, and frankincense. In some cases, small packets of natron or even onions were placed inside. This served several purposes. It helped to maintain the body's shape during the drying process, absorbed any lingering moisture, and added to the pleasant, sacred aroma of the preserved body. It's like stuffing a plush toy to give it its proper form, but with very expensive, very fragrant stuffing. The 70 days of the natron bath have finally drawn to a close. You watch as the embalmers, with careful, practiced movements, begin to remove the vast quantities of salt that have encased the body. The shimmering white crystals are gently brushed away, revealing the form beneath. What emerges is dramatically different from the body that entered the tent. It's rigid, shrunken, and dark, its skin taut and leathery, almost like dried parchment. But it is undeniably preserved, a testament to the power of desiccation. The scent of dry earth and ancient minerals now permeates the air. A clean, almost sterile aroma. You find yourself standing on the banks of the Nile, the lifeblood of ancient Egypt, a river that not only nourished the land, but also shaped the very soul of its people. For the ancient Egyptians, life on earth was but a fleeting moment, a brief prelude to an eternal existence in the field of reeds, their version of paradise. But here's the catch to reach this blissful afterlife. Your physical body, along with your spiritual essence, had to remain intact. It wasn't enough to simply die. You had to be prepared, preserved, and presented in a way that would allow your ka and ba, your life force and your personality, respectively, to recognize their earthly vessel and reunite with it in the great beyond. Without a recognizable body, your soul risked wandering lost and forgotten, forever excluded from the eternal banquet. Think of it as the ultimate cosmic ID check. No body, no entry. This transformed body is now ready for its next phase, a stage that is less about physical preservation and more about spiritual consecration, the anointing and application of fragrant resins. This is where the deceased is prepared not just for physical eternity, but for divine recognition. You can almost feel the dry, cool air of the tent as the embalmers begin this delicate and aromatic process. This profound belief in the necessity of physical preservation wasn't just a quaint custom. It was the cornerstone of their entire worldview, influencing everything from their architecture to their daily rituals. You see the massive pyramids looming on the horizon, not just as tombs, but as monumental gateways to eternity, built to house and protect the mummified remains of their pharaohs and nobles. It's a common historical fact that the Egyptians believed in an afterlife, and the depth of their commitment to ensuring safe passage was truly extraordinary. They weren't just hoping for the best, they were actively engineering their immortality. The common historical fact is that after the natron treatment, the body was thoroughly cleaned and then anointed with a variety of precious oils and resins. These weren't just for pleasant smells. They were integral to the spiritual purification and protection of the deceased. Imagine a sacred spa treatment, but instead of leaving feeling refreshed, you're being prepared for an eternal journey. In the earliest days, before the elaborate rituals of mummification were perfected, the desert itself was the primary embalmer. You can almost feel the dry, searing heat of the sand as it naturally desiccated bodies buried within it, preserving them in a surprisingly lifelike state. These early, accidental mummies likely sparked the initial curiosity and understanding of preservation. Imagine stumbling upon a naturally preserved body centuries ago. It would be both terrifying and incredibly insightful. This natural process, however, was unpredictable and lacked the dignity and spiritual significance the Egyptians craved. They wanted control, precision, and a ritualized journey, not just a lucky break from the desert. This desire for a more controlled and sacred preservation led to the development of artificial mummification, a process that would evolve over thousands of years into one of the most sophisticated and enduring practices in human history. You watch as the embalmers carefully wipe down the body, removing any lingering natron dust. Then they begin to apply the first of many layers of sacred oils. These oils, often derived from cedar, juniper, and various fragrant plants, were believed to have purifying properties, cleansing the body of any remaining impurities from its mortal life. You might catch a subtle, woody scent, mingling with the dry air. Each stroke is deliberate, almost a caress, as if they are preparing a divine statue rather than a human form. The transition from natural burial to complex artificial mummification is a fascinating subject, and historians still debate whether the initial impetus was purely religious or if practical observations of natural preservation played a more significant role in its genesis. Did they first notice bodies preserved in the sand and then develop the religious framework around it? Or did the religious belief in the afterlife drive the experimental preservation methods? It's a bit of a chicken and egg scenario, isn't it? Regardless, what began as a simple burial in the sand eventually transformed into a meticulous 70-day odyssey of transformation, a journey from the living to the eternally living. Following the initial anointing, the body is then treated with a more substantial application of melted resins. These resins, often a mixture of frankincense, myrrh, and other aromatic gums, are warmed to a semi-liquid state, allowing them to be carefully poured and spread over the entire surface of the body. You can almost hear the soft, viscous sound as the warm, sticky liquid adheres to the leathery skin. The aroma intensifies now, a rich, deep, almost intoxicating fragrance that fills the tent. It's a scent that speaks of ancient temples and sacred rituals, a perfume of eternity. As you walk through the ancient city, you realize that this wasn't just a task for a few specialized priests. It was an entire industry, a sacred craft passed down through generations. The process was incredibly labor-intensive, requiring a vast array of specialized tools, materials, and highly skilled individuals. From the initial incision makers, known as the slitters, to the chief embalmer, who was often a high-ranking priest, each person played a crucial role in preparing the deceased for their ultimate voyage. It was a big business, too, with different tiers of mummification available, depending on your social standing and, more importantly, your bank account. You could opt for the full, lavish treatment fit for a pharaoh, or a more budget-friendly option that still ensured some level of preservation. It's like choosing between a first-class flight to the afterlife or a more economical coach ticket. Either way, you're getting there. But the amenities differ. This application of resin served multiple purposes. Practically, it created a protective, airtight seal over the body, further preventing moisture reabsorption and inhibiting bacterial growth. It was like applying a natural, organic varnish, ensuring the mummy's long-term durability. Spiritually, the resins were believed to have potent magical and protective qualities, consecrating the body and making it ready for the divine presence. They were thought to ward off evil spirits and ensure the deceased's safe passage through the perils of the underworld. It's a bit like putting a very expensive, very fragrant sealant on your eternal vehicle. The air around you is thick with the scent of the desert, a dry, earthy smell. But you can also detect faint hints of something else, perhaps the lingering aroma of myrrh or frankincense from a recent burial procession. The sun beats down relentlessly, reminding you of the harsh realities of life and death in this ancient land. Yet, amidst this arid landscape, there's an undeniable sense of purpose, a deep-seated belief that transcends the physical. Every step, every ritual, every carefully chosen material was designed to ensure the deceased's successful transition. It wasn't just about preserving a body, it was about preserving a soul, a legacy, and a connection to the divine. One unusual detail you might notice is the meticulous attention paid to the body's features. The embalmers would carefully mold and shape the face, sometimes stuffing the cheeks with linen or sawdust to restore a more lifelike appearance, as the drying process could cause significant shrinkage. The eyes, if not already replaced, might be covered with small linen pads or even artificial eyes made of stone or glass, giving the mummy a more serene and watchful gaze. The nostrils might be plugged with beeswax or resin-soaked linen, and the mouth carefully closed and secured, often with a chin strap or by packing the mouth cavity. These efforts were all aimed at creating a recognizable and dignified image for the Ka and Ba. Imagine the subtle artistry involved in making a dried body look presentable for judgment, One of the more unusual and perhaps less known aspects of this eternal quest was the sheer variety of beings that underwent mummification. While we often think of pharaohs and nobles, the Egyptians extended their preservation practices far beyond human remains. You might imagine the meticulous care given to a beloved cat, a sacred ibis, or even a crocodile, all carefully mummified and placed in tombs, sometimes alongside their human companions, sometimes in vast animal cemeteries. It was like their version of a pet cemetery, but with significantly more elaborate preparation. These animal mummies weren't merely pets. They were often seen as incarnations of deities, offerings to the gods, or even food provisions for the human deceased in the afterlife. Imagine trying to explain that to your modern-day vet. Yes, I need my hamster mummified. Please, he's got a long journey ahead. It highlights the all-encompassing nature of their belief system, where every living creature, in some way, played a part in the grand cosmic order. The application of resins was a lengthy process, often involving multiple layers. Each layer would be allowed to cool and harden before the next was applied, building up a thick, protective shell. This also contributed to the dark, almost black appearance of many mummies, as the resins would oxidize and darken over time. You can picture the embalmers, their hands coated in the sticky, fragrant substance, patiently working to ensure complete coverage. The entire process was a testament to their unwavering faith. A 70-day journey that mirrored the journey of the sun, God Ra, across the sky. Each day brought a new stage of transformation, a step closer to immortality. It was a profound act of devotion, a final, loving gesture to ensure that the departed would not only survive but thrive in the afterlife. You can almost hear the hushed chants of the priests, the rustle of linen, and the rhythmic movements of the embalmers as they meticulously worked to defy decay. It's a bit like a very, very slow motion, extremely high stakes spa treatment, where the goal isn't just relaxation, but eternal existence. Historians still debate the precise chemical composition and origin of all the resins used in mummification. While we know about frankincense and myrrh, there were likely other, perhaps more localized or rare, resins and plant extracts incorporated into the mixtures. The exact recipes often varied, and some may have been closely guarded secrets of particular embalming families or temples. It's like trying to reverse engineer a secret family recipe from thousands of years ago. You can get close, but some ingredients might remain a mystery. As you consider the enormity of this undertaking, you begin to appreciate the dedication and ingenuity of the ancient Egyptians. They didn't just accept death, they challenged it, transforming it into an elaborate art form. They understood, perhaps better than any civilization before or since, that the line between life and death was not a sharp divide, but a permeable membrane, and with the right preparation, one could traverse it with grace and dignity. The eternal quest wasn't just a philosophical concept, it was a practical, hands-on endeavor, a testament to their belief that the journey truly was just beginning. The significance of these aromatic materials went beyond mere preservation. In ancient Egypt, scent was intimately linked with divinity and purity. Temples burned incense daily, and offerings to the gods often included fragrant oils. By anointing the deceased with these same sacred aromas, the Egyptians were elevating the body to a divine status, making it fit to dwell among the gods. It was a sensory bridge between the mortal and the immortal, a fragrant pathway to the divine. Now, let's delve deeper into the mindset that drove this monumental effort. You see, for the Egyptians, the afterlife wasn't some ethereal, abstract concept. It was a tangible place, a mirror image of their earthly existence, but perfected. The field of reeds, or Aru, was envisioned as a fertile land, abundant with crops, where you would live eternally, free from the hardships of earthly labor. But to enjoy this paradise, you needed to be whole, your body a familiar vessel for your reunited Ka and Ba. This is why the preservation of the physical form was paramount. It wasn't just about preventing decay, it was about ensuring identity. Imagine showing up to an eternal party, but no one recognizes you because you've, well, decomposed. Awkward. You might also observe the use of various packing materials. After the body had been thoroughly dried and the internal organs removed, the body cavity was often filled with bundles of linen, sawdust, or even aromatic substances like frankincense and myrrh. This wasn't just to restore the body's shape, it also helped to absorb any residual moisture and contributed to the overall pleasant scent of the mummy. It's like creating a very fancy, very fragrant internal cushion. The preparations for this journey often began long before death. Wealthy Egyptians would commission their tombs, sarcophagi, and funerary goods years in advance, ensuring every detail was perfect for their transition. You can almost feel the weight of expectation on their shoulders. The constant awareness that their earthly actions and preparations would dictate their eternal fate. It was a pressure cooker of spiritual responsibility, far more intense than trying to finish your taxes on time. Every inscription, every offering, every amulet placed within the tomb was a carefully considered step in securing a prosperous afterlife. The hands and feet were often treated with particular care, sometimes wrapped individually before the main body bandaging began. The fingernails and toenails might even be secured with small gold caps or thread to prevent them from falling off during the process, ensuring the completeness of the body. These tiny, meticulous details highlight the extreme lengths the Egyptians went to ensure every part of the deceased was perfectly preserved. It's like making sure every single button is sewn on perfectly before you send a garment out. The Egyptians' understanding of the human body, while not entirely anatomical in a modern sense, was remarkably sophisticated for their time, particularly concerning the internal organs. They knew which organs were vital for life and, therefore, which needed to be preserved. This knowledge, gained through centuries of mummification practice, was a closely guarded secret, passed down through generations of embalmers. It was a specialized skill, almost like a sacred surgery, performed with immense reverence and precision. You can picture the apprentices, eyes wide with awe, learning the intricate techniques from their masters, understanding that their hands held the key to someone's eternity. As the layers of resin are applied, the body begins to take on a glossy, almost polished appearance. It no longer looks like a dried husk, but a transformed, almost sculptural form. The embalmers work with a quiet reverence, their movements imbued with spiritual significance. They are not just applying substances, they are performing a sacred ritual, preparing the deceased for their rebirth. The materials used in mummification were also carefully chosen, not just for their preservative qualities, but for their symbolic significance. Natron salt, a naturally occurring mineral mixture from the desert, was the primary drying agent, but resins, oils, and fragrant spices like myrrh, frankincense, and cassia were also essential. These weren't just pleasant scents, they were believed to have purifying and protective properties, transforming the deceased's body into a sacred, immortal form. It's like a very expensive, very spiritual potpourri, designed to last for millennia. The embalmers would also pay attention to the hair. While some mummies retain their natural hair, in other cases, the hair might be braided, styled, or even supplemented with extensions to give a fuller, more youthful appearance. This further emphasizes their desire to present the deceased in their ideal, perfected form for the afterlife. The sheer duration of the mummification process, a full 70 days, was not arbitrary. This period was believed to correspond with the time the star Sothis Sirius was absent from the night sky, a significant celestial event that marked the flooding of the Nile and the rebirth of the land. By aligning the mummification process with this cosmic cycle of renewal, the Egyptians further imbued the ritual with divine power, connecting the individual's rebirth to the rebirth of the natural world. It was a grand symphony of earthly and celestial rhythms, all orchestrated to ensure a successful journey to the field of reeds. This stage of anointing and resin application could take several days, as each layer needed time to set and harden. It was a patient, methodical process, a testament to the dedication of the embalmers and the profound importance placed on the deceased's journey. You can imagine the quiet hum of activity in the tent, punctuated by the soft sounds of application and the rich, enveloping aromas. You might wonder, with all this focus on the body, what about the mind? What did the Egyptians believe about the brain? This is where things get a little squishy. While they meticulously preserved the heart, believing it to be the seat of intellect, emotion, and memory, the brain was largely disregarded. It was often removed through the nostrils with a long, hooked instrument and discarded. Imagine the scene: a priest, with a steady hand, performing this rather unceremonious act. while the rest of the body was treated with such reverence? It's a curious disconnect, isn't it? Perhaps they saw it as mere packing material, or simply didn't understand its function in the same way we do today. It makes you think about how much our understanding of ourselves has evolved. If they knew what we know now, they might have given the brain its own little canopic jar. Perhaps even a tiny, ornate one. The resins, once hardened, formed a durable, almost impenetrable layer that protected the mummy from environmental damage and insects. This practical benefit was undoubtedly understood by the Egyptians, even if their primary motivation was spiritual. It's a brilliant example of how their religious beliefs led to incredibly effective, long-lasting practical solutions. The meticulousness of the process extended to even the smallest details. Every finger and toe was individually wrapped, every crevice filled with resin, every layer of linen applied with purpose. The embalmers weren't just technicians, they were artists, creating a masterpiece of preservation that would stand the test of time. You can almost hear the rustle of the linen as it's carefully unfurled, the soft thud of a tool being set down, the quiet concentration of those dedicated to this sacred task. It was a silent ballet of reverence and precision, performed under the watchful eyes of the gods. As the final layers of resin are applied and allowed to set, the body is now fully prepared for its external adornment. It is no longer just a preserved corpse, it is a mummified being, consecrated, protected, and ready for its sacred wrappings. The rich, lingering scent of myrrh and frankincense fills the air, a testament to the transformation that has occurred. The journey through the embalmer's tent is nearing its end, and the deceased is about to be clothed in the garments of eternity. And it wasn't just the human body that received such elaborate treatment. As mentioned earlier, the mummification of animals was a widespread and fascinating practice. From sacred bulls like Apis, revered as living gods, to millions of cats, dogs, birds, and even fish. All were prepared for the afterlife. These animal mummies served various purposes. Some were beloved pets, others were offerings to specific deities, and some were even intended as food for the deceased in the afterlife. Imagine a pharaoh's tomb, not just filled with gold and jewels, but also with mummified chickens, ready for an eternal feast. It truly underscores the holistic nature of their belief system, where every aspect of life and death was interconnected. The air in the embalmer's tent now hums with a different kind of energy. The rich, intoxicating aroma of myrrh and frankincense, layered over the dry earthiness of natron, is a constant companion. The body, transformed by the 70-day drying process and consecrated by layers of precious oils and resins, now lies before you, a dark, gleaming testament to ancient ingenuity. It's no longer just a body, it's a vessel, prepared for eternity. And now, this vessel is ready for its final, most iconic transformation, the sacred wrappings. The journey to the afterlife was fraught with peril. According to Egyptian mythology, the deceased had to navigate treacherous waters, encounter fearsome demons, and face the ultimate judgment before Osiris, the god of the underworld. The preserved body, along with the spells and amulets placed within the wrappings, served as a guide and protection, ensuring safe passage through these trials. It was like a spiritual GPS and a full set of body armor for the ultimate boss battle. Without proper preparation, the journey could end in eternal annihilation, a fate far worse than simply not making it to the party. You watch as the embalmers, their hands still sticky with resin, begin to bring forth an astonishing quantity of linen. Not just any linen, mind you, but fine. Often bleached, strips of fabric, meticulously torn or cut into various widths and lengths. It's a common historical fact that thousands of yards of linen were used to wrap a single mummy. Imagine the sheer volume of fabric, enough to stretch for miles if unraveled. It's like preparing for the ultimate, most elaborate gift wrapping session, where the gift is a perfectly preserved human being, and the ribbon is more linen. So, as you stand here, feeling the ancient dust on your skin and hearing the distant echoes of a civilization that defied death, you begin to grasp the profound significance of mummification. It was more than just a burial practice. It was an act of faith, a scientific endeavor, and a spiritual journey, all rolled into one. It was their way of saying, death, you may claim the body for a moment, but eternity belongs to us. And with that understanding, You are now ready to step closer to witness the very first surprising steps taken to transform a mortal coil into an immortal vessel. The wrapping process is not a haphazard affair. It is a highly ritualized, meticulous art form performed with precision and deep spiritual significance. You see the embalmers begin with the head and neck, carefully winding the strips around, layer upon layer. Each finger and toe is often wrapped individually. A tiny, intricate detail that speaks volumes about their dedication to wholeness. Then, the limbs are bandaged, followed by the torso, until the entire body is enveloped in a cocoon of fabric. You drift now, gently, from the sweeping vistas of the Nile and the grand concepts of eternity, and find yourself standing before a more intimate, yet equally profound, scene. You're at the edge of what appears to be a large, unassuming tent, made of sturdy linen, perhaps or animal hides, pitched just outside the city walls. This isn't a place of mourning, not in the way you might expect. Instead, it hums with a quiet, purposeful energy. This is the embalmer's tent, a sacred space, a temporary sanctuary where the journey to immortality truly begins. The air here is different. It carries a faint, complex scent, a mix of something earthy, something sweet, and a hint of antiseptic. It's not unpleasant, but it's certainly unique. A smell that will soon become synonymous with transformation. As the layers accumulate, the mummy begins to regain some of its original form, softened by the padding of the linen. The embalmers work with a rhythmic precision, their movements almost hypnotic. They don't just wrap, they sculpt, ensuring the bandages are tight enough to provide support and protection, yet not so tight as to damage the fragile, desiccated skin beneath. You can almost hear the soft rustle of the linen as it's unfurled and applied, a soothing, repetitive sound that contributes to the calm, almost meditative atmosphere of the tent. As you step closer, you see figures moving within, robed and focused, their movements deliberate and practiced. These are the embalmers, the chosen few entrusted with the sacred task of preparing the deceased for their eternal voyage. They are not merely technicians, they are priests, guardians of ancient rituals, their hands guided by centuries of tradition and an unwavering belief in the afterlife. Their faces are calm, their expressions serene, as if they are performing the most natural act in the world. And to them, perhaps, it is. But the linen isn't just for structural integrity or aesthetic appeal. Between the countless layers of bandages, the embalmers meticulously place a variety of amulets. These aren't just pretty trinkets, they are powerful magical charms, each with a specific purpose, designed to protect the deceased from harm, guide them through the perils of the underworld, and ensure their successful rebirth. This is an unusual detail, the sheer number and variety of amulets, each strategically placed, turn the mummy into a walking, or rather, lying fortress of magical protection. It's like equipping your eternal avatar with all the best power-ups before the final boss fight. The very first step in this elaborate 70-day process is surprisingly swift, almost jarring in its directness. Once the body is brought to the tent, it is carefully laid out on a wooden table, often slightly inclined to allow for drainage. You watch as a specialized priest, known as the slitter or incisor, approaches. This individual, often of a lower caste due to the perceived impurity of the task, holds a sharp obsidian knife. Obsidian, a volcanic glass, was chosen for its incredible sharpness, capable of making a clean, precise incision. It's a common historical fact that the Egyptians used a variety of tools for mummification, but the obsidian knife for the initial cut is particularly notable for its ritualistic significance. You might see a scarab beetle amulet, often made of green stone, carefully placed over the heart. This is perhaps the most common and vital amulet, symbolizing rebirth and regeneration. It was believed to prevent the heart from testifying against the deceased during the judgment before Osiris. Imagine a tiny, silent advocate, ensuring your good deeds are remembered. Hey guys, tonight we're going to dim the lights, settle into our coziest blankets, and journey back. Way back, to a time when the desert sands whispered secrets of eternity. We're heading to ancient Egypt, a land where death wasn't the end of the story, but merely the most elaborate chapter. Imagine the scorching sun beating down on the Nile, the scent of exotic spices mingling with the dust, and the distant murmur of life along the riverbanks. You're there, standing on the cusp of a civilization obsessed with what comes next. A civilization that believed so profoundly in the afterlife that they literally took their bodies with them. It's a bit like packing for a really, really long trip. Except your luggage is, well, you. And let's be honest, in that climate, without their ancient know-how, you probably wouldn't survive the journey to the corner store, let alone the afterlife. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, if you're listening, drop a comment below with your location and local time. It's always wild to see how far these whispers travel. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Other amulets appear as the wrapping continues. With a single, swift movement, the slitter makes an incision along the left side of the abdomen. This cut, typically about 5 to 10 inches long, is the gateway to the internal organs, the very core of the body that must be addressed to prevent decay. It's a moment of profound transition, the first physical act that separates the living body from its eternal form. You might wince, but the embalmers show no hesitation. For them, this is not an act of violence, but a necessary opening, a doorway to the sacred work that lies ahead. It's a bit like opening a very important, very delicate package. You know what's inside, and you need to be careful. But the opening itself is just the first step. The ankh, the symbol of life, often placed near the hands or chest, ensuring eternal vitality. Immediately after the incision, but the slitter would often flee, sometimes even being pelted with stones by onlookers. This seemingly bizarre ritual was a symbolic act of purification, distancing the embalmers from the unclean act of violating the body. It's an unusual detail, isn't it? Imagine performing a vital, necessary medical procedure and then having to make a run for it. It highlights the complex interplay of practicality, or ritual, and superstition that permeated ancient Egyptian life. The chief embalmer, a much higher-ranking priest, would then take over, overseeing the meticulous removal of the internal organs. The Jed pillar representing stability and the backbone of Osiris, signifying endurance and resurrection. Now, this is where things get truly fascinating. With the incision made, the embalmers begin the delicate process of evisceration. You see them carefully reaching into the abdominal cavity, their hands moving with practiced ease. The goal is to remove all the organs that are prone to rapid decay, which, in the warm Egyptian climate, happens rather quickly. Think of it as a race against time, but a very calm, methodical race. The intestines, stomach, liver, and lungs are all gently extracted. Each organ is handled with immense reverence, for they are not simply biological components, they are believed to be essential for the deceased's continued existence in the afterlife. The Tayet, or Isis knot, a symbol of protection and the power of the goddess Isis often placed on the neck or chest. The heart, however, is a notable exception. This is a common historical fact. The heart was almost always left in place. Why? Because the Egyptians believed the heart was the seat of intelligence, emotion, and memory, the very essence of an individual's being. It was the organ that would be weighed against the feather of Ma'at truth and justice in the Hall of Two Truths during the final judgment. To remove it would be to strip the deceased of their identity and their ability to be judged. So, while other organs were carefully taken out, the heart remained, a silent sentinel of the soul. It's a bit like leaving the hard drive in your computer when you're upgrading everything else. You need that core data. The Wadjet Eye, or Eye of Horus, symbolizing protection, royal power, and good health, often placed on the forehead or within the wrappings. The removed organs are not simply discarded. Oh no, that would be far too disrespectful, and far too risky for the afterlife journey. Instead, each organ undergoes its own meticulous preservation process. You watch as they are carefully washed, often with palm wine, a powerful antiseptic, and then packed with natron salt, just like the body itself will be. This initial treatment helps to dry and preserve them, preventing decay. Then, each organ is individually wrapped in linen bandages, creating small, neat bundles. Various animal amulets, like the head of a cobra or a vulture, offering specific divine protection. These bundles are destined for a very special place, canopic jars. You see a set of 4 beautifully crafted jars nearby. each with a distinct lid representing one of the four sons of Horus. These deities were believed to protect the specific organs Duamutev. The jackal-headed god guarded the stomach. Kebesenuef, the falcon-headed god, protected the intestines. Happy, the baboon-headed god, watched over the lungs, and Imseti, the human-headed god, safeguarded the liver. It's an unusual detail, isn't it? How each organ had its own divine bodyguard. These jars would then be placed within the tomb, alongside the mummy, ensuring that the deceased had access to all their vital parts in the afterlife. It's like having separate, beautifully decorated storage containers for your most precious belongings, each with its own tiny, mythological security guard. Each amulet was placed with intention, often accompanied by specific spells or incantations recited by the priests. These spells, drawn from texts like the Book of the Dead, were believed to activate the amulet's power, imbuing it with magical energy. You can almost hear the low, rhythmic chanting of the priests, their voices a soft drone in the tent, as they weave spiritual protection into every layer of linen. It's a bit like a very ancient, very serious coding session, where each line of code is a powerful spell. The process within the embalmer's tent is a symphony of coordinated effort. While some priests are busy with the evisceration, others are preparing the natron salt, crushing it into a fine powder, ready for the next stage. You might notice the careful attention to hygiene, as much as was possible in ancient times. The embalmers would wear protective coverings, and the tent itself would be regularly cleaned. This wasn't just for aesthetic reasons, it was crucial for preventing contamination and ensuring the success of the preservation process. After all, you don't want your eternal journey to be cut short by a bacterial infection. The linen itself was often of varying quality. The innermost layers might be coarser, while the outer layers, particularly for royalty, would be of the finest, most luxurious weave. Sometimes the linen would be stained with a reddish hue, perhaps from ochre, symbolizing life and regeneration. And in some cases, bandages were even soaked in resin, creating a harder, more impenetrable outer shell. This resin-soaked linen would dry and harden, forming a protective, almost plaster-like casing around the mummy, further sealing it from the outside world. Imagine the mummy becoming a kind of human sarcophagus, self-contained and immensely durable. The air inside the tent, while still carrying those unique scents, is surprisingly calm. There's no rush, no panic. Every action is deliberate, every movement precise. The embalmers understand the profound responsibility they carry. They are not just preserving a body, they are facilitating a rebirth, ensuring that a soul can continue its existence in the divine realm. It's a sacred trust, passed down through generations, and they perform it with unwavering dedication. The process of wrapping could take up to 15 days, a significant portion of the 70-day mummification period. It was slow, painstaking work, requiring immense patience and skill. The embalmers had to ensure that the bandages were applied evenly, without wrinkles or gaps, to maintain the mummy's integrity. Any imperfections could potentially compromise the deceased's journey to the afterlife. It's a bit like wrapping a very fragile, very important package for shipping across the universe. You don't want any corners sticking out. One common historical fact that often surprises people is the sheer scale of mummification. It wasn't just for pharaohs and the elite. While the most elaborate and expensive methods were reserved for royalty, people of all social classes sought some form of preservation. Even commoners, if they could afford it, would undergo a simpler, less costly process, perhaps involving less thorough evisceration or a shorter natron bath. The desire for an afterlife was universal, a testament to the pervasive nature of their religious beliefs. It's a bit like how everyone wants to go on vacation, but not everyone can afford a luxury cruise. Still, a road trip is better than staying home. Historians still debate the precise ritualistic order of placing certain amulets and the specific spells recited during each stage of wrapping. While the Book of the Dead provides general guidance, the exact practices might have varied between different periods, regions, or even individual embalming workshops. Was there a secret sequence that guaranteed a smoother passage? The nuances of these ancient rituals continue to fascinate and challenge modern scholars. As the internal organs are removed, the body cavity is thoroughly cleaned. You see the embalmers rinsing it with palm wine again, and then packing it with temporary stuffing materials, often linen or sawdust, soaked in aromatic resins. This helps to maintain the body's shape during the drying process and also adds to the pleasant, sacred aroma. It's like preparing a delicate sculpture for transport, ensuring it doesn't lose its form. This temporary packing is crucial before the main drying phase begins. As the layers of linen build up, the mummy begins to take on its familiar, iconic form. The arms are often crossed over the chest, sometimes holding symbols of power like the crook and flail for pharaohs. The legs are bound together, ensuring a dignified posture for eternity. The entire body is transformed into a compact, self-contained unit, ready for its final resting place. The entire process, from the moment the body arrives to the completion of the evisceration and initial cleaning, is conducted with a deep sense of reverence. The embalmers often recite prayers and incantations as they work, invoking the gods to protect the deceased and guide them on their journey. The sounds are hushed, almost meditative, adding to the tranquil atmosphere of the tent. It's a spiritual workshop, where the physical and the divine intertwine. You might notice that the embalmers sometimes use small, wooden splints or padding to help maintain the mummy's shape, particularly in areas that might have shrunk significantly during desiccation. These internal supports, hidden beneath the layers of linen, were another example of their practical ingenuity, ensuring the mummy retained a lifelike appearance. It's like a very subtle, ancient form of internal scaffolding. Historians still debate the exact composition and preparation methods of the various resins and oils used in the embalming process. While we know many of the ingredients, the precise recipes and techniques varied over time and between different embalming schools. Was there a secret ingredient that made one mummy more perfectly preserved than another? We may never know all the nuances, but the results speak for themselves. The enduring nature of these mummies is a testament to their ancient chemical and anatomical knowledge. Even if it wasn't formalized in the way we understand science today, the outer layers of the wrappings were often adorned with painted designs or even gilded cartonnage, a material made from layers of linen and plaster. These decorations could include images of deities, protective symbols, or even a stylized portrait of the deceased, further enhancing the mummy's identity and spiritual protection. Imagine the mummy becoming a canvas for sacred art, a final, beautiful tribute. You might notice a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in the air as the initial stages conclude. The body, though altered, now feels lighter, purer, ready for the next phase of its transformation. The work within the embalmer's tent is far from over, but the most critical immediate steps to prevent decay have been taken. The opening has been made, the perishable removed, and the sacred vessels prepared. The journey to the afterlife is now truly underway, and you're about to witness the most transformative step of all, the great drying. The very act of wrapping was deeply symbolic. It was a symbolic rebirth, a return to a fetal position, ready to emerge into the afterlife. The layers of linen were like swaddling clothes, preparing the deceased for a new beginning. It was a profound act of care, a final loving gesture from the living to the dead, ensuring their eternal comfort and safety. You remain within the quiet confines of the embalmer's tent, the faint scent of palm wine and spices still lingering in the air. The initial meticulous work of eviscerating the abdominal cavity has been completed. The vital organs, cleansed and prepared, now rest in their designated canopic jars, awaiting their eternal placement. But as you look at the body, now lighter, hollowed, you realize there's one more crucial internal component that must be addressed, or rather unaddressed. We're talking about the brain, that complex, convoluted organ that, for us, is the very seat of thought, consciousness, and memory. Yet, for the ancient Egyptians, its fate was remarkably, almost shockingly, different from the revered heart. The embalmers, often wearing masks of Anubis, the jackal-headed god of mummification, would perform these duties with utmost reverence. They were not just craftsmen, they were priests, embodying the divine power of Anubis, guiding the deceased through the liminal space between life and death. You can almost feel the weight of their spiritual responsibility, the quiet intensity of their focus. You watch as the chief embalmer, perhaps the very priest who oversaw the initial incision, now approaches the head of the deceased. There's a particular tool in his hand, long and slender, with a curved, almost spoon-like hook at its end. It looks a bit like a very specialized knitting needle, or perhaps a rather grim dental instrument. This is the tool for the brain's demise. This is where things get a little less elegant, and certainly more direct. As the final bandages are applied, the mummy is often secured with long horizontal and vertical bands of linen, creating a neat, almost geometric pattern. These bands would sometimes be sealed with resin or wax, further securing the wrappings and adding another layer of protection. The mummy is now a complete, self-contained package, ready for its sarcophagus. The common historical fact is that the ancient Egyptians believed the heart was the center of intellect and emotion. The organ that truly defined a person, the brain, on the other hand, was largely dismissed. It wasn't seen as essential for the afterlife, and in fact was often considered a rather inconvenient, perishable mass that could actually hinder the preservation process. Think of it as packing foam, useful in life, but definitely not something you want to bring to your eternal paradise. The scent in the tent is now a complex tapestry of aromas, the dry earthiness of natron, the rich sweetness of resins, and the clean, fresh smell of linen. It's a scent unique to this sacred space, a fragrance of immortality. The mummy, once a fragile human form, is now a powerful, protected entity, ready to face the challenges of the underworld and claim its place in the field of reeds. You observe the embalmer as he carefully, yet firmly, inserts the long, hooked instrument up through one of the nostrils. The goal is to reach the brain tissue, which, surprisingly, is quite accessible through this pathway. There's a soft, squishing sound, barely audible above the quiet hum of the tent, as the hook is manipulated. The priest then begins to churn and liquefy the brain tissue, breaking it down into a more manageable, semi-liquid state. It's a delicate balance of force and precision, ensuring the skull itself remains intact, as the outer form of the head is vital for the Ka and Ba to recognize their vessel. The completion of the wrapping signifies the culmination of the embalming process within the tent. The body has been transformed, protected, and consecrated. It is no longer vulnerable to decay. It is a permanent dwelling for the Ka and Ba, a bridge to eternity. You feel the profound sense of accomplishment in the air, a quiet triumph over mortality. The journey is nearing its physical end, but the spiritual voyage is just beginning. The mummy, now fully prepared, is ready to leave the embalmer's tent and embark on its final ceremonial journey to the tomb. After the brain has been sufficiently agitated and liquefied, the body is then carefully tilted, sometimes even turned on its side, to allow the dissolved brain matter to drain out through the nostrils. You might hear a faint, viscous trickle as the fluid makes its exit, often collected in a basin below. This is the unusual detail, isn't it? Unlike the other vital organs which were carefully preserved and placed in canopic jars, the brain was almost universally discarded. It wasn't deemed worthy of eternal preservation, a stark contrast to the reverence shown to the heart, liver, lungs, and intestines. It's a bit like taking out the trash after a big party, but the trash is your entire conscious mind. The mummy, now a meticulously wrapped resin-hardened vessel, stands ready. The air in the embalmer's tent still carries the lingering symphony of natron, myrrh, and fresh linen, a scent that now feels like the very aroma of eternity. You feel a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a change from the quiet, painstaking work of preservation to a more active, profound ritual. The physical transformation is complete, but the spiritual journey demands one more vital step before the final resting place, the opening of the mouth ceremony. This practice raises a fascinating question: why such a disparity in treatment? Historians still debate the exact reasons for the brain's casual disposal. Was it truly seen as functionally irrelevant to the afterlife, a mere cranial stuffing? Or was it simply too difficult to preserve effectively with their methods, leading them to conclude it was better to remove it entirely than risk it decaying within the skull and compromising the entire mummification process? Perhaps it was a combination of both. Imagine trying to dry out a sponge, but it's still inside a sealed container. It would be much easier to remove the sponge first. This practical consideration likely played a significant role alongside their spiritual beliefs. You find yourself transported from the confines of the tent to a more open, ceremonial space. perhaps a courtyard within the funerary complex, or even at the entrance to the tomb itself. The sunlight, though still warm, feels less harsh here, softened by the solemnity of the occasion. Before you, the mummy stands upright, often propped against a support or held by priests, facing east towards the rising sun, a symbol of rebirth. The process of brain removal was often one of the earliest steps, sometimes even preceding the abdominal incision, though the order could vary slightly depending on the period and the embalmer's specific techniques. The key was to get rid of this perishable material quickly to prevent putrefaction that could spread throughout the head and neck, potentially disfiguring the face, a major concern, as facial recognition was paramount for the Ka and Bei. You can almost feel the dry, warm air of the tent, and the slight, almost imperceptible vibrations as the embalmer works. A silent testament to the ancient understanding of decay. This is a common historical fact. The opening of the mouth ceremony was a crucial ancient Egyptian ritual, performed on the mummy and sometimes on statues of the deceased, to symbolically restore the senses. It was believed that without this ritual, the deceased would be unable to eat, drink, speak, see, hear, or breathe in the afterlife. Imagine being perfectly preserved, ready for paradise, but unable to enjoy any of its delights because you're essentially a silent, sightless, sensationless statue. It's like getting a brand new high-tech gadget, but forgetting to charge the battery. For a civilization so meticulous about preserving every other vital part, this apparent disregard for the brain stands out. It underscores their unique anatomical and spiritual understanding. They prioritize the heart as the intellectual and emotional core, the seat of the soul's judgment. The brain, in their view, was simply not part of that equation. It's a bit like us focusing on the CPU of a computer and ignoring the cooling fan essential for function, but not the brain itself. Of course, we know better now, but for them, it was a perfectly logical conclusion based on their observations and beliefs. You watch as a high-ranking priest, often dressed in the distinctive leopard skin cloak of a Sem priest, approaches the mummy. In his hands, he holds a collection of specialized ritualistic tools. One, in particular, catches your eye, a small adze-like instrument, often made of iron or obsidian, with a distinctive curved blade. This is the Pesesh Kaf instrument, a tool of profound symbolic power, believed to have originated from the tools used by ancient craftsmen to cut the umbilical cord at birth. This connection to birth underscores the ceremony's theme of rebirth. After the draining, the cranial cavity might be rinsed, perhaps with more palm wine or a mixture of herbs, to ensure as much of the remaining liquefied tissue was removed as possible. Sometimes the cavity would then be packed with linen strips soaked in resin or even sawdust to help maintain the shape of the skull and absorb any lingering moisture. This wasn't about preserving the brain, but about ensuring the structural integrity of the head, which was the ultimate container for the identity of the deceased. You can picture the careful packing, the gentle shaping, as the embalmer ensures the face retains its familiar contours. The ritual begins with a series of purifications. You might see the priest sprinkling water or burning incense around the mummy, cleansing it of any lingering earthly impurities. The air fills with the sweet, smoky aroma of incense, a scent that now feels deeply intertwined with the sacred. Then, the priest begins to recite powerful spells and incantations from the Book of the Dead, his voice a low, resonant drone that seems to vibrate through the very air. These aren't just words, they are divine commands, intended to awaken the dormant senses of the deceased. The entire procedure, though seemingly crude by modern standards, was performed with remarkable skill and an understanding of anatomy that was advanced for its time. They knew the pathways, the fragility of the tissues, and the necessity of speed. It's a credit to their practical ingenuity, even if their theoretical understanding of brain function was different from ours. Imagine trying to explain neuroscience to an ancient Egyptian embalmer. They'd probably just nod politely and then ask you where you keep your heart. This stage of mummification, though brief, is a vivid example of the ancient Egyptians' pragmatic approach to their spiritual beliefs. They weren't afraid to get their hands dirty, or to make what might seem to us like rather drastic alterations to the body, all in service of a higher purpose, eternal life. The removal of the brain was a necessary evil, a small sacrifice to ensure the greater triumph over decay and the successful journey to the field of reeds. You might find yourself wondering about the smell during this particular stage. While the tent generally carried the pleasant aromas of resins and spices, the initial moments of brain removal would undoubtedly have a distinct, unpleasant odor. However, the embalmers were accustomed to it, and the swiftness of the procedure, combined with immediate cleaning and the later application of fragrant materials, would have quickly masked it. It's a testament to their dedication that they endured such tasks for the sake of the deceased's eternal well-being. It's like a very smelly, very important job interview where you just have to power through it. This is an unusual detail during the ceremony. Offerings of food and drink were often presented to the mummy, and even symbolically placed near its mouth. While the mummy couldn't physically consume them, the ritual was believed to allow the K of the deceased to partake of the spiritual essence of the offerings. Imagine a grand, ethereal feast, where the food is consumed by the soul, not the body. It highlights the Egyptians' belief in the interconnectedness of the physical and spiritual realms, where symbolic actions had very real, eternal consequences. The disposal of the brain was often quite unceremonious. It was simply thrown away, perhaps buried in the desert or washed into the Nile. This contrasts sharply with the careful burial of the canopic jars, which were themselves miniature tombs for the other organs. This difference in treatment further emphasizes the brain's perceived insignificance in the afterlife. It was a biological byproduct, not a spiritual component. The ceremony wasn't just performed on the mummy, it was also carried out on the deceased statue, which was often placed in the tomb as a backup vessel for the Ka and Ba, just in case anything happened to the mummy itself. This redundancy speaks volumes about the Egyptians' meticulous approach to ensuring eternal life. They weren't taking any chances. It's like having a cloud backup for your most important files, just in case your main hard drive crashes. As the embalmer finishes with the cranial cavity, you feel a sense of completion for this particular stage. The body is now prepared for the next, most crucial phase of preservation. The internal organs are safely nestled in their jars, and the brain, deemed unnecessary, has been removed. The physical vessel is being systematically stripped of all that would lead to its decay, transforming it from a fragile, mortal form into a durable, immortal shell. The air in the tent begins to shift again, growing drier, more expectant. You sense the transition to the next great step, a process that will truly defy the ravages of time and prepare the body for its ultimate transformation. The ritual was deeply rooted in ancient mythology, particularly the story of Osiris, the god of the underworld, who was murdered and dismembered by his brother Set, and then resurrected by his wife Isis. The opening of the mouth ceremony was, in essence, a reenactment of Osiris's own resurrection, allowing the deceased to share in his divine rebirth. You can almost feel the weight of this ancient narrative, playing out before you, connecting the individual's fate to the grand cosmic drama. The sheer consistency of this practice across millennia is itself a remarkable feat. From the early dynasties to the Roman period, the method of brain removal remained largely unchanged, a testament to its effectiveness in their eyes. Even as other aspects of mummification evolved, the brain's fate was sealed. It highlights a deep-seated, almost instinctual understanding that while the heart was the emotional core, the brain was simply a wet, perishable mass that needed to be dealt with to ensure long-term preservation. They didn't have microscopes or neurology textbooks, but they had thousands of years of trial and error, and a profound respect for the practicalities of defying decay. As the priest continues, other tools might be used. A small censer emitting fragrant smoke might be passed over the mummy, further purifying and consecrating it. Sometimes a small bowl of water, representing the primordial waters of creation, would be offered. Each element, each gesture was imbued with layers of meaning, designed to prepare the deceased for their new, eternal existence. Consider the skill involved. To extract the brain through the nostrils without damaging the facial structure or the skull required immense dexterity and anatomical knowledge. It wasn't just a haphazard poking, it was a precise, albeit somewhat gruesome, surgical procedure. The embalmers, though not doctors in our modern sense, were masters of their craft, learning the delicate balance between preservation and destruction. You can almost hear the soft, rhythmic scraping as the tool works its way through the nasal passages, a sound that would have been utterly alien to any modern ear. Historians still debate the precise origins and evolution of the opening of the mouth ceremony. While its core purpose remained consistent, the specific tools, incantations, and sequence of events varied significantly over different periods of Egyptian history. Was it a ritual that developed organically from simpler funerary practices? Or was it a more sudden innovation tied to specific theological developments? The exact trajectory of its development remains a subject of ongoing scholarly discussion. Adding another layer of intrigue to this profound ceremony, the contrast between the treatment of the brain and the heart is perhaps the most striking aspect of this stage. The heart, the very essence of the individual, was not only left in place, but was also often protected by a scarab amulet placed over it, ensuring its integrity for the weighing of the soul. This dual approach, discarding the brain while safeguarding the heart, speaks volumes about their understanding of identity and consciousness. For them, true identity resided not in the gray matter of the skull, but in the beating organ that felt remembered and judged. It's a fascinating philosophical difference, isn't it? Imagine if our modern understanding of self was so fundamentally different. The ceremony could be quite lengthy, involving multiple priests and a large retinue of mourners and family members. It was a public display of devotion, a final collective act of ensuring the deceased's successful transition. You can almost hear the hushed murmurs of the onlookers, their faces solemn, as they witness this sacred moment. It's a powerful communal experience, bridging the gap between the living and the dead. As the last remnants of the brain are cleared, and the cranial cavity is treated, a sense of quiet finality settles over the head. The face, though still and lifeless, retains its form, its potential for recognition preserved. The embalmers have done their part, ensuring that this crucial aspect of the deceased's identity is maintained for the journey to the field of reeds. The body, now truly prepared internally, is ready for the next, most significant phase of its transformation, the long, slow, and utterly essential process of drying. The air around you seems to grow even drier, as if anticipating the vast quantities of natron salt that will soon envelop the body. Drawing out every last drop of moisture and preparing it for its eternal slumber, the Sem priest, acting as a proxy for the deceased's son, would often perform the most critical parts of the ritual. This symbolized the son's filial duty to ensure his father's rebirth, mirroring the role of Horus, who performed the ritual for his father Osiris. This familial connection further emphasizes the deeply personal and generational aspect of Egyptian funerary practices. You observe the meticulous work inside the embalmer's tent, the air now filled with a more pronounced, almost sweet, aroma of resins and spices, a stark contrast to the fleeting, unpleasant scent from the brain's removal. The body, having undergone its initial internal cleansing and the unceremonious discarding of the brain, lies ready. But the journey to immortality is far from over. Now the focus shifts to the vital organs, the stomach, intestines, liver, and lungs, which, unlike the brain, were considered absolutely essential for the deceased's existence in the afterlife. These organs, once removed, demanded their own, equally elaborate preservation after the symbolic touches and incantations. The mummy might be further adorned. A ceremonial wig might be placed on its head, or a necklace of protective amulets draped around its neck. The outer wrappings might be decorated with painted scenes or gilded cartonnage, further enhancing its divine appearance. The mummy is no longer just a preserved body. It is now a fully activated, spiritually prepared entity, ready to embark on its final journey. You watch as the embalmers, their movements precise and reverent, begin the delicate process of treating these organs. Each organ, having been carefully extracted through the abdominal incision, is now individually handled. They are first thoroughly washed, often with palm wine, a natural antiseptic that also carries symbolic significance. Imagine the careful rinsing, the gentle handling, as if each organ were a precious jewel. It's a common historical fact that palm wine was used in this initial cleansing, not just for its practical properties, but also for its purifying qualities. The air now feels lighter, almost celebratory. The solemnity remains, but it is tempered by a sense of accomplishment, a quiet triumph. The deceased is no longer merely dead. They are reborn, their senses restored, their path to the field of reeds now clear. The opening of the mouth ceremony has unlocked the gates of eternity. allowing the ka and ba to fully inhabit their prepared vessel. After washing, each organ is then meticulously packed with natron salt, the same powerful desiccant that will soon envelop the entire body. This dry salt draws out all moisture, preventing decay and ensuring the organ's long-term preservation. You can almost feel the fine grains of natron, absorbing the very essence of life, transforming it into something enduring. This step is crucial. Without it, the organs would quickly decompose, jeopardizing the deceased's ability to be whole in the afterlife. Think of it as freeze-drying, but with ancient technology and a lot more spiritual intent. You feel a profound sense of closure for this stage. The mummy, now fully consecrated and reanimated, is ready to leave this ceremonial space and be carried to its ultimate, eternal dwelling. The sounds of chanting begin to fade, replaced by the soft shuffling of feet as the procession prepares to move. The journey is nearing its physical conclusion, but the spiritual adventure is just beginning. The tomb awaits, a final embrace for the eternal traveler. Once dried and treated with natron, the organs are often anointed with fragrant oils and resins, adding another layer of preservation and spiritual significance. These oils, derived from various plants and trees, not only smelled pleasant, but were believed to have protective and purifying properties. You might catch a whiff of myrrh or frankincense, familiar scents from ancient rituals, now applied to these most intimate parts of the human form. It's a sensory experience, even for you, a silent observer. The echoes of the opening of the mouth ceremony still resonate in the air, a spiritual hum that seems to cling to the very fabric of the desert. The mummy, now not just preserved but spiritually reanimated, stands ready, its senses symbolically restored, its path to the afterlife cleared. You feel the atmosphere shift once more, from the intense focus of ritual to the solemn grandeur of a final journey. The time has come for the deceased to leave the ceremonial space and embark on its ultimate procession to the tomb, the eternal dwelling that has been prepared for millennia. Now, here's where the story of these organs becomes truly unique and visually striking. Unlike the brain, which was discarded, these 4 vital organs were destined for their own special containers, the canopic jars. You see a set of these jars, typically made of alabaster, pottery, or limestone, standing ready nearby. They are beautifully crafted, often adorned with intricate carvings or painted scenes, each a miniature work of art in itself. But it's their lids that truly capture your attention. You find yourself amidst a gathering of people, a mix of priests, professional mourners, and the family of the deceased. The sun, now higher in the sky, casts long shadows, but the mood is one of quiet purpose, not despair. A common historical fact is that Egyptian funerary processions were elaborate affairs, designed not just to transport the body, but to publicly affirm the deceased's status and ensure their successful transition to the afterlife. Imagine a parade, but instead of floats and confetti, you have priests, incense, and a very, very important passenger. Each of the 4 canopic jars is topped with a distinct lid, representing one of the 4 sons of Horus, ancient Egyptian deities specifically tasked with protecting these internal organs. This is an unusual detail, isn't it? Imagine having a divine guardian assigned to each of your major organs. The mummy, often placed within a series of nested coffins and then a massive stone sarcophagus, is now carefully positioned on a large wooden sledge. This isn't a wheeled cart, it's a heavy, flat platform designed to be dragged across the sand. You can almost feel the strain as a team of oxen or a large group of men, sometimes even professional pullers, begin to haul the sledge forward. The ground beneath you vibrates with the slow, rhythmic movement. Sometimes water or milk might be poured onto the sand in front of the sledge to reduce friction, an unusual detail that speaks to their practical ingenuity. It's like using a giant, ancient slip and slide, but for a coffin. Imseti, with his human head, was the protector of the liver. The liver was considered vital for life and purification, and Imseti's human form symbolized the human aspect of the deceased. The procession begins, a slow, deliberate march towards the necropolis, the city of the dead carved into the desert cliffs or built on the western bank of the Nile, where the sun sets, symbolizing death and rebirth. You hear the mournful wails of the professional mourners, women known as the kites of Nephthys, who would lament loudly, tearing their hair and beating their chests. Their cries, though stylized, add a poignant, almost theatrical element to the journey, expressing the community's grief and respect. It's a bit like a very dramatic ancient funeral dirge, performed live. Happy, the baboon-headed god, guarded the lungs. The lungs were essential for breath, the very essence of life, and Happy's fierce yet protective visage was believed to keep them safe. As the procession moves, priests walk alongside, chanting prayers and burning incense. The sweet, smoky aroma trails behind them, a fragrant cloud that seems to purify the very air. You might see servants carrying funerary offerings, baskets of food, jars of wine, and bundles of linen, all intended to sustain the deceased in the afterlife. These weren't just symbolic gestures, they were believed to be tangible provisions for the eternal journey. Imagine packing a picnic basket, but for a trip that lasts forever. Dua Mutef, the jackal-headed god, watched over the stomach. The stomach, responsible for nourishment, was crucial for sustenance in the afterlife. And Dua Mutef's jackal form, often associated with the desert and burial, offered protection. The journey to the tomb could be short or long, depending on the location of the burial site. For pharaohs and high-ranking nobles, the tomb might be a monumental structure, a pyramid or a rock-cut chamber, already prepared and waiting. For others, it might be a simpler shaft tomb. Regardless of its grandeur, the tomb was seen as the deceased's eternal home, a place of rest and rebirth. Kebesenuef, the falcon-headed god, protected the intestines. The intestines, responsible for processing food, were also important for continued sustenance. And Kebesenuef's falcon head, a symbol of the heavens and divine power, ensured their safety. Upon arrival at the tomb entrance, the procession pauses. Here, more rituals are performed. The mummy, still within its sarcophagus, might be temporarily stood upright again, facing the entrance. The Sem priest, who performed the opening of the mouth ceremony, would likely lead these final rites, ensuring that the tomb itself was consecrated and ready to receive its eternal occupant. You can almost feel the weight of centuries of tradition pressing down on this moment, a culmination of all the efforts to defy death. You can almost feel the weight of these jars, each containing a piece of the deceased, each protected by a divine guardian. The embalmers carefully place the prepared and wrapped organs into their respective jars. It's a moment of quiet solemnity, a profound act of reassembly, ensuring that the deceased would have all their parts, protected and ready for their eternal journey. It's like putting very important, very delicate puzzle pieces into their custom-made boxes, each with its own picture on the lid. This is where an unusual detail comes into play sometimes. A ritualistic sacrifice of animals, such as oxen or geese, would take place at the tomb entrance. These animals, once slaughtered, would be offered to the gods or even prepared as food for the deceased's ka in the afterlife. While it might seem gruesome to modern sensibilities, for the Egyptians, it was a profound act of devotion, ensuring abundant provisions for the eternal journey. It's a bit like a very elaborate ancient barbecue, held for a very special guest. The practice of using canopic jars evolved over time. In earlier periods, the organs might have been returned to the body cavity after preservation, or simply placed in bundles within the sarcophagus. However, the use of distinct canopic jars became the standard practice, particularly during the New Kingdom, signifying a more formalized and ritualized approach to organ preservation. This evolution reflects the Egyptians' continuous refinement of their mummification techniques and their deepening understanding of the afterlife's requirements. Finally, the moment arrives for the mummy to enter its eternal dwelling. With immense effort, the heavy sarcophagus containing the mummy and its nested coffins is carefully maneuvered into the tomb's burial chamber. You hear the scraping of stone on stone, the grunts of the laborers, as the massive container is slowly, painstakingly moved into its designated spot. The chamber, often decorated with vibrant paintings depicting scenes from the afterlife and protective deities, awaits its eternal resident. Historians still debate the precise ritualistic significance of each son of Horus and why these specific deities were chosen to protect these particular organs. Was there an underlying anatomical or symbolic connection that we no longer fully grasp? Or was it a more arbitrary assignment that simply became tradition? The exact nuances of their theological reasoning remain a subject of scholarly discussion. adding another layer of mystery to these fascinating artifacts. Once the sarcophagus is in place, the burial chamber is then filled with a vast array of funerary goods. This is a common historical fact. Egyptian tombs were often packed with objects the deceased would need in the afterlife. You see furniture, jewelry, clothing, tools, weapons, games, and even chariots or boats for the wealthy. For pharaohs, the sheer quantity of gold and precious artifacts is almost unimaginable. These weren't just possessions. They were believed to become magically animated in the afterlife, ready for the deceased's use. It's like moving into a new house, but you bring absolutely everything you own, plus a few things you might need in a parallel dimension. Once the organs are safely sealed within their canopic jars, the jars themselves become sacred objects. They are often placed in a special canopic chest, a smaller ornate box that would then be interred within the tomb alongside the sarcophagus. This chest acted as a secondary layer of protection, ensuring the safety of these vital components. Imagine a series of nested boxes, each one revealing another layer of preciousness and protection, all leading to the ultimate goal of eternal life. Among these goods, you might notice shabti figures. These are in unusual detail small, servant-like figurines, often made of faience or wood, inscribed with spells. It was believed that if the deceased was called upon to perform manual labor in the afterlife, these shabti figures would magically come to life and perform the work for them. Imagine having a tiny, magical workforce ready to do all your eternal chores. It's a clever ancient workaround for eternal toil. The care taken with the organs underscores the Egyptian belief in the holistic integrity of the body in the afterlife. It wasn't enough to simply have a preserved outer shell. The inner workings, the very machinery of life, also needed to be present and functional, at least symbolically. This concept of wholeness was paramount for the Ka and Ba to reunite with the body, and for the deceased to enjoy the full benefits of the field of reeds. After all the funerary goods are carefully arranged around the sarcophagus, the final, most solemn act takes place: the sealing of the tomb. You watch as a massive stone slab, or a series of stone blocks, is slowly lowered or rolled into place, sealing the entrance to the burial chamber. The sounds of scraping stone echo through the corridor, a final, definitive thud that marks the separation of the living from the dead. Sometimes, the entrance passage itself would be filled with rubble or false walls constructed to deter tomb robbers. With the pesesh calf instrument, the priest gently, yet deliberately, touches the mouth of the mummy. This isn't a physical opening, of course. The mummy's mouth is tightly bound. Instead, it's a symbolic gesture, a magical activation. You can almost feel the spiritual energy as the priest touches the mouth, then the eyes, the ears, and sometimes even the nose, touching each sensory organ in turn. Each touch is accompanied by a specific incantation, restoring the ability to speak, to see the glories of the field of reeds, to hear the voices of the gods, and to breathe the sweet air of eternity. The purpose of sealing the tomb was twofold: to protect the mummy and its valuable contents from desecration and theft, and to ensure the undisturbed rest of the deceased. The Egyptians believed that if the tomb was disturbed, the Ka and Ba would be unable to return to the body, thus disrupting the eternal journey. So, the sealing wasn't just about security, it was about safeguarding immortality. It's like putting a very serious "do not disturb" sign on the door of eternity. The embalmers would also pay close attention to the eyes and mouth. The eyes might be replaced with small linen pads or even artificial eyes made of stone or glass, to give the face a more lifelike appearance. The mouth would be closed and often stitched or bound to prevent it from gaping open. Again, to maintain the dignity and recognizable form of the deceased. These seemingly minor details were all part of the larger effort to create a perfect, eternal image. Historians still debate the effectiveness of these tomb sealing methods against ancient tomb robbers. While some tombs remained untouched for millennia, many others were plundered in antiquity, often within generations of their sealing. Was the technology of tomb security simply not advanced enough, or were the motivations of the robbers just too strong? The ongoing discovery of looted tombs continues to fuel this discussion, reminding us that even in ancient Egypt, some things were just too tempting to resist. The entire process, from the initial incision to the sealing of the canopic jars, was a meticulously choreographed dance of ritual and practicality. Every step had a purpose, both spiritual and scientific in their understanding of it. The embalmers, often priests of Anubis, the jackal-headed god of mummification, would perform their duties with a deep sense of reverence, understanding that they were facilitating a divine transformation. You can almost hear their hushed chants, their prayers echoing softly within the tent, as they worked to ensure the deceased's eternal well-being. As the last stone slides into place, a profound silence descends. The light from the outside world is extinguished, and the tomb is plunged into eternal darkness. The priests and mourners then slowly retreat, leaving the deceased alone in their eternal home, surrounded by their possessions and protected by spells and stone. The procession has ended. The tomb has embraced its occupant, and the physical journey is complete. The canopic jars themselves were not merely utilitarian containers. They were imbued with immense symbolic power. Their presence in the tomb signified the deceased's readiness for the afterlife, their completeness, and their protection by the gods. They were a visible testament to the family's devotion and the embalmer's skill. Imagine the pride in commissioning such beautiful vessels. Knowing they would safeguard the most intimate parts of your loved one for eternity, you feel a sense of quiet finality. The mummy, once a living person, then a carefully prepared vessel, has now found its ultimate resting place. It is a moment of profound peace, a culmination of thousands of years of belief, ritual, and meticulous effort. The desert wind whispers outside. But within the tomb, time stands still. The deceased now rests, awaiting the final judgment and the ultimate journey to the field of reeds. The physical world has done its part. Now the spiritual adventure truly begins. As the last of the organs are placed into their jars and sealed, a sense of quiet accomplishment settles over the embalmer's tent. The body, now internally prepared, is ready for the most extensive and transformative phase of mummification, the Great Drying. The air, already dry from the desert heat, seems to crackle with anticipation. You feel the subtle shift in energy, the transition from the internal preparation to the external preservation. The stage is set for the long, slow, and utterly essential process that will truly defy the ravages of time and prepare the body for its ultimate transformation. The last stone has slid into place, sealing the tomb in profound darkness. The priests and mourners have retreated, leaving the deceased alone, surrounded by their treasures and the silent whispers of eternity. You feel the physical world receding, its sounds and sensations fading, as the true journey begins. This is not a journey across the desert sands, but through the vast, mysterious realms of the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. The mummy, now a perfectly preserved vessel, is ready to embark on its ultimate voyage, the perilous yet hopeful path to the field of reeds, their version of eternal bliss. The air in the embalmer's tent, already dry and carrying the faint scent of spices, now feels charged with a new, almost palpable anticipation. The body, having been meticulously prepared internally, its perishable organs removed and safely tucked into their canopic jars, its brain unceremoniously discarded, lies ready. This is the moment, you realize, for the most crucial and transformative step in the entire mummification process, the Great Drying. This is where the very essence of decay is defied, where the fragile, watery human form is transformed into a durable, eternal vessel. A common historical fact is that the ancient Egyptians believed the afterlife was not simply a destination, but a complex journey through the Duat, a shadowy realm filled with both dangers and divine assistance. This journey mirrored the nightly passage of the sun god Ra through the underworld, and the deceased hoped to emulate his successful rebirth each morning. Imagine a cosmic obstacle course, but the prize is eternal happiness, and the stakes are, well, everything. You watch as the embalmers, with renewed focus, begin to bring forth vast quantities of a peculiar substance. It's a white, crystalline material, resembling coarse salt, but with a subtle, almost chalky texture. This, you learn, is natron, the miracle mineral of ancient Egypt. It's a naturally occurring salt, found in abundance in the Wadi el Natron, a valley located west of the Nile Delta. This isn't just your everyday table salt, it's a mixture of sodium carbonate, sodium bicarbonate, sodium chloride, and sodium sulfate. This unique composition makes it an incredibly effective desiccant, capable of drawing out moisture from tissues with remarkable efficiency. Imagine a superpowered sponge, but for an entire body. As the deceased awakens in the duat, they are not alone. Their Ka life force and Ba personality's soul, having been carefully preserved and honored, now seek to reunite with their mummified body. This reunion is crucial. It's what allows the individual to become an Ak, a transfigured and blessed spirit, capable of moving freely between the living world and the divine realm. Without this reunion, the soul risked eternal wandering, a fate worse than death itself. It's like trying to log into your favorite game, but your character file is corrupted. No fun. The common historical fact is that the body was completely covered in natron salt for a period of 70 days. This wasn't an arbitrary number, it was deeply symbolic, mirroring the 70 days that the star Sothis Sirius was believed to be absent from the night sky. The reappearance of Sothis heralded the annual flooding of the Nile, a time of rebirth and renewal for the land. By aligning the mummification process with this celestial cycle, the Egyptians imbued the ritual with cosmic significance, connecting the deceased's personal rebirth to the grand cosmic order. It's like a very long, very dry spiritual retreat, timed perfectly with the universe. The journey through the duat is described in texts like the Book of the Dead, a collection of spells, prayers, and instructions designed to guide the deceased safely through the underworld. You can almost hear the whispered incantations from these ancient scrolls, providing the deceased with the knowledge and power to overcome the challenges ahead. These spells were not just words, they were believed to be active forces, opening pathways, warding off demons, and securing divine favor. You see the embalmers carefully lifting the body and placing it on a sloping board or a specially designed bed. This slight incline is an unusual detail, isn't it? It allowed any remaining bodily fluids, drawn out by the natron, to drain away, ensuring maximum desiccation. Below the board, you might notice collection basins, quietly gathering the expelled moisture. This wasn't just about drying, it was about purifying, about shedding the last vestiges of the mortal coil. One of the first and most terrifying challenges is navigating the various gates and caverns of the duat, each guarded by fearsome, often grotesque, demons. These aren't your friendly neighborhood monsters, they are terrifying entities with names like Eater of the Dead or He Who Lives on Worms. The deceased must know the correct passwords, the proper spells, and the appropriate gestures to pass safely through these gates. It's like a very high-stakes ancient Egyptian escape room, where failure means eternal oblivion. Then, the true work begins. Scoop after scoop, the embalmers begin to pile the natron salt over the body. You can almost hear the soft, rustling sound as the crystals cascade over the skin, covering every inch. They meticulously pack the salt into every crevice, every fold of the skin, ensuring complete contact. The body cavity, which was previously packed with temporary stuffing, is now also filled with large quantities of natron, ensuring that the internal drying is just as thorough as the external. It's like burying the body in a shimmering white desert, a desert designed to absorb every drop of moisture. But the ultimate test, the most pivotal moment in the entire journey, is the weighing of the heart ceremony in the Hall of Two Truths. You find yourself in a grand, shadowy hall, illuminated by an ethereal light. Before you stands Osiris, the majestic god of the underworld, enthroned as the supreme judge. Beside him are 42 divine judges, representing truth and justice. Anubis, the jackal-headed god of mummification, stands ready, preparing the scales. As the days turn into weeks, the natron works its magic. You can almost feel the moisture being wicked away. Cell by cell, fiber by fiber, the body gradually shrinks, its features becoming more defined, more skeletal. The skin, once soft and pliable, it becomes taut and leathery. The transformation is slow but relentless, a testament to the power of desiccation. It's a bit like watching a very, very long-term science experiment, where the goal is to turn something squishy into something incredibly durable. You watch as the deceased's heart, having been carefully left in the mummy, is symbolically placed on one side of a great balance scale. On the other side rests the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth, justice, and cosmic order. Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom and scribes, stands by, ready to record the verdict. This is the common historical fact the heart was weighed against the feather of Ma'at to determine the deceased's worthiness for the afterlife. During this 70-day period, the embalmers would periodically check on the body, sometimes replenishing the natron or turning the body to ensure even drying. This wasn't a set-it-and-forget-it operation. It required constant vigilance and expertise. Imagine the dedication the patients required to oversee such a lengthy and delicate process. It's a job that definitely requires a good audiobook or two. The deceased must then recite the negative confession, a list of 42 declarations denying various sins, such as, I have not stolen, I have not killed, I have not told lies. This is an unusual detail. It wasn't a confession of sins committed, but a declaration of sins not committed, a way of asserting one's moral purity. Imagine having to stand before a divine jury and list everything you didn't do wrong in your life. It's a bit like a very intense, eternal job interview where you have to prove your innocence before you even get to paradise. Historians still debate the precise method of applying and replenishing the natron over the 70 days. Was it a single, massive application? Or were layers refreshed and replaced as they became saturated with moisture? The archaeological evidence suggests varying practices, indicating that while the core principle of natron desiccation was universal, the specific techniques might have differed between workshops or across different time periods. It adds another layer of complexity to understanding their ancient craft. If the heart balances perfectly with the feather, it signifies that the deceased lived a righteous life, free from heavy sin. But if the heart is heavy with wrongdoing, if it outweighs the feather, then a terrifying fate awaits. You see a monstrous creature lurking nearby, a composite beast with the head of a crocodile, the body of a lion, and the hindquarters of a hippopotamus. This is Amit, the devourer of the dead. If the heart fails the test, Amit instantly devours it, and the deceased's soul is annihilated, forever ceasing to exist. There is no second chance, no eternal damnation, just utter non-existence. It's the ultimate consequence, the absolute end of the line. The goal of this extensive drying period was not just to prevent putrefaction, but to preserve the body in a recognizable form. The Egyptians believed that the Ka and Ba needed to be able to identify their physical vessel to reunite with it in the afterlife. A decomposed, unrecognizable body would leave the soul wandering eternally, lost and without a home. So, the natron bath was essentially the ultimate anti-aging treatment, designed to last for millennia. Historians still debate the precise theological implications of Amit's role and the nature of annihilation in ancient Egyptian belief. Was it a true, permanent end? Or was there some subtle form of continued non-existence? The exact nuances of their concept of eternal punishment versus non-existence remain a fascinating subject of academic discussion. You might wonder about the smell during these 70 days. While the initial stages of mummification could be unpleasant, the natron itself is an excellent deodorizer. As it absorbs moisture, it also inhibits the growth of bacteria that cause decay and odor. So, by the time the 70 days were up, the body would likely have a dry, almost earthy scent. Mingled with the lingering aromas of the resins and spices used in earlier stages. It's a far cry from what you might imagine, isn't it? No zombie apocalypse out smells here. Just the quiet scent of eternity. Assuming the heart passes the test, a wave of relief washes over the scene. The deceased is declared true of voice, or justified, and is welcomed by Osiris into the field of reeds Aru. This is the ultimate destination, the Egyptian paradise. You feel the shadowy confines of the Duat begin to recede, replaced by a vision of lush, fertile lands. The importance of this stage cannot be overstated. Without thorough desiccation, all the previous steps, the evisceration, the cleaning, the canopic jars would have been in vain. The body would simply rot, and the journey to the field of reeds would be irrevocably halted. The natron bath was the linchpin of the entire mummification process, the critical phase that truly transformed the deceased from mortal to immortal. The field of reeds is depicted as a perfect, idealized version of Egypt itself. You see endless fields of ripe grain, shimmering waterways, and abundant fruit trees. The sun shines eternally, and the air is always pleasant. Here, the deceased lives a life of eternal bliss, free from hunger, thirst, or toil. They are reunited with their loved ones, who have also passed the judgment, and they enjoy an endless supply of delicious food and drink. It's like being on the best, most comfortable vacation of your entire existence. Forever. As the weeks passed, the embalmers would also be preparing the other aspects of the funerary ensemble. The canopic jars would be polished, the tomb prepared, and the various amulets and charms meticulously crafted. The 70 days of the natron bath were a period of intense activity, a coordinated effort to ensure that every detail was perfect for the deceased's grand departure. It was a bit like planning a very elaborate wedding, but for someone who's already passed on, the funerary goods placed in the tomb now become magically animated, ready for the deceased's use. The Shabti figures, those tiny servant figurines, spring to life, ready to perform any manual labor the deceased might be called upon to do. Imagine waking up in paradise and having a magical army of miniature servants to do all your chores. It's a pretty sweet deal, isn't it? One common misconception is that the Egyptians pickled their dead. While the use of salt might suggest this, the process was one of desiccation, not pickling. Pickling involves preserving in a liquid medium, while mummification aimed to remove all moisture. So, no, they weren't turning their pharaohs into giant, salty gherkins. They were creating a dry, durable shell that could withstand the ravages of time. The deceased, now an Ak, can travel freely within the field of reeds, tending their fields, fishing in the abundant waters, and enjoying the company of the gods. They are no longer bound by earthly limitations, but exist in a state of perfected being. The mummy, safely tucked away in its tomb on earth, serves as the anchor, the physical link that allows the Ak to exist and thrive in the afterlife. The sheer volume of natron required for each mummification was immense. For a single body, hundreds of pounds of the salt would be used, a testament to the scale of this industry. The logistics of mining, transporting, and storing such vast quantities of natron were themselves a significant undertaking, highlighting the organizational prowess of the ancient Egyptians. It wasn't just about the ritual, it was about the supply chain, too. The journey to the afterlife is not just a one-time event, it's a continuous cycle. The deceased, like Ra, metaphorically journeys through the Duat each night, only to be reborn with the sun each morning in the field of reeds. This cyclical nature reinforces the Egyptian belief in constant renewal and eternal existence. As you observe the body, now completely encased in a shimmering layer of natron, you feel a profound sense of stillness. The tent is quiet, almost reverent. The transformation is underway, slow and silent, but utterly powerful. The forces of decay are being systematically repelled, replaced by the enduring power of preservation. The body, once a living, breathing entity, is now a vessel for eternity, a bridge between the earthly realm and the divine. You feel a profound sense of peace now, a quiet understanding of the ancient Egyptian worldview. Their obsession with preserving the dead wasn't morbid. It was an act of profound hope, a testament to their unwavering belief in a vibrant, eternal existence beyond the veil of death. Every incision, every grain of natron, every layer of linen, every chanted spell, and every precious artifact placed in the tomb was a step towards this ultimate goal, a successful journey to the field of reeds, and where life, in its most perfect form, would continue forever. This long period of drying also allowed time for the internal organs, now in their canopic jars, to fully dry and cure. The entire system was designed for maximum efficiency and effectiveness, ensuring that every part of the deceased was ready for the ultimate reunion. It's a remarkably sophisticated system, considering the tools and knowledge available to them thousands of years ago. The whispers of the desert fade now, replaced by a gentle stillness. The journey through ancient Egypt, through the embalmer's tent, the sacred rituals, and the perilous duat is complete. You have witnessed their profound dedication to life beyond life, their meticulous efforts to defy decay and ensure a glorious eternity. You can almost visualize the desert winds, dry and constant, mirroring the work of the natron. The very environment of Egypt, with its arid climate, was conducive to this form of preservation, almost as if nature itself conspired with the embalmers. It's a beautiful synergy between human ingenuity and natural forces, all working towards a single, profound goal: immortality. The desert sands outside your window are now bathed in the soft, fading light of dusk, or perhaps the gentle glow of dawn, depending on where you are in the world. The ancient whispers of Egypt, of natron and linen, of pharaohs and the field of reeds, begin to recede, settling like dust motes in the quiet air. You can let go of the images of embalmers and canopic jars, of solemn processions and the weighing of the heart. Those journeys are complete, their purpose is fulfilled. All that remains is the gentle hum of your fan, the soft warmth of your blanket, and the quiet rhythm of your own breath. The ancients sought their eternal rest, and now, so can you. Let the stories drift away, like boats on the Nile, carrying their secrets into the vast, silent night. There's nothing left to do, no more paths to follow, just the gentle drift into slumber. As the 70 days draw to a close, the embalmers will begin the careful process of removing the natron. The body will emerge, dramatically altered, but perfectly preserved. It will be rigid, shrunken, and dark, but undeniably human. This dried form is the canvas for the next stage of transformation, where oils, resins, and sacred wrappings will complete the journey. The great drying is nearly complete, and the body is about to embark on its most aromatic and protective phase.